I woke up in the emergency room on my birthday. The first thing I noticed was the light, a harsh white glow that made everything feel distant and unreal. The ceiling tiles above me looked like they were floating in and out of focus. The faint smell of antiseptic settled in the back of my throat, sharp enough to make my stomach churn. Machines beeped somewhere near my head, steady but unfamiliar, and for a moment I wondered if I was dreaming. I tried to lift my hand to shield my eyes, but something tugged at my skin. An IV line, a blood pressure cuff. My arm felt heavy, numb, almost disconnected from me. A voice reached me from the side. "You are awake?" "Good. Addison Wright." I turned my head slow and reluctant. A nurse stood beside the bed, her expression calm and trained, but I could see concern at the edges of her eyes. She adjusted a monitor before speaking again. "You were brought in about an hour ago. You were found unconscious on the floor of your living room. Do you remember what happened?" My mind stretched, trying to piece together the last clear moment I had. There were flashes, a raised voice, something slamming, heat in my cheeks. My birthday, my 26th birthday. That was the last thing I knew with certainty. My voice cracked as I whispered, "Who brought me here?" "A neighbor," she replied. "Older lady. She said your family left the house a few minutes before she found you." Then her tone softened, almost apologetic. "Found unconscious. No family present." The words stung in a way I was not prepared for. I sank back against the pillow as the nurse lifted the head of the bed, the movement sending a dull ache through my skull. She handed me a cup of water. "Sip, slowly. You have a mild concussion." My fingers trembled when I reached for my phone. It lit up with a burst of notifications. 34 missed alerts. None from my family. I opened the first app and my breath caught in my throat. A photograph filled the screen. My mother, my father, and my brother Liam, dressed like they were attending some fancy dinner. My mother's caption sat proudly above their smiling faces. "So proud of my son today." The image behind them showed a restaurant decorated with balloons and a banner. My father raised a glass of wine. Liam grinned like he had achieved something monumental. My mother leaned into him, her smile wide and bright. I scrolled my thumb, shaking. Another post, more pictures, more smiles. Another caption, celebrating Liam in his big moment. So much joy, so much pride, so much celebration. Not one word about me. Not one mention of the fact that today was my birthday, my 26th birthday. I scrolled again. A short video clip played automatically. My mother's voice rang out over the restaurant noise. "Here we are celebrating Liam and his big day. So proud. Such a special night for our family. Special night. For our family." I stared until my eyes burned. The nurse returned briefly to check the monitor, then faded into the hallway again. I barely noticed her. All I could feel was a slow, spreading hollowness inside my chest. My head pulsed as fragments of memory flickered and fought their way back. Liam shouting earlier in the evening, his face twisted with impatience. "Your birthday is meaningless. Stop acting special. No one cares about a pointless day like that. Meaningless." The final moments before everything went dark started coming back in waves. Me standing near the living room doorway. Liam pacing, slamming drawers, blaming me for his missing keys. His voice climbing inch by inch until he towered over me. A shove, the world tilting, a sharp impact against the side of my head. Then, nothing. I pressed my palm to my forehead and forced myself to focus on the present, on the stark hospital room, on the fact that I had woken up alone, on the truth that my family had not called, texted, or even pretended to check on me. They were too busy raising glasses, too busy celebrating Liam, too busy posting pictures of their perfect night. The monitor beside me beeped in steady rhythm as I tried to steady my breathing. My phone dimmed in my hand, the last photo still on the screen. My family smiling. My mother leaning into Liam. My father bragging in the comments. My birthday forgotten entirely. A single question rose louder than everything around me, louder than the lights and the beeping and the ache in my skull. If my family knew I ended up here, hurt and alone on my birthday, then why did they not come? Morning sunlight filtered through the thin curtains of my bedroom window, but it felt dull and tired the same way I did. I stared at the ceiling for a long moment before forcing myself upright. My head felt heavy even then, long before it would be injured later that night. 26. I whispered it to myself not out of excitement, but because I needed to hear at least one voice acknowledge the day. I swung my legs over the side of the bed and let my feet touch the cold wooden floor. My room smelled faintly of espresso grounds from my apron tossed over a chair after my closing shift at the cafe. I worked late the night before because no one in my family asked if I had plans. They rarely did. I pulled on a sweater and crept down the hallway. The house was quiet except for the clatter of pots and pans coming from the kitchen. My mother never cooked for me on my birthday. She only cooked when she had a reason related to my brother. I paused outside the doorway, hearing her hum lightly. Good mood. That meant something for Liam. When I stepped inside, she barely looked up. "You are up late, Addison. Grab the steamer from the top shelf, will you?" I blinked. Good morning works too, I thought. But I did not say it. I reached for the steamer and placed it next to her. She was preparing a dish I recognized instantly. Lemon butter salmon. Liam's favorite, not mine, not even close. Then, "Is something happening today?" I asked, even though I knew the answer. My mother shot me a quick glance. "Liam has his recognition ceremony tonight. Big night for him. You know that." I did know. I had heard about it every day for the past 2 weeks. A regional sales award at his insurance job. A plaque. A handshake. Nothing that required balloons and champagne, but my mother liked to pretend Liam was climbing a ladder no one else could touch. I swallowed a quiet sting. "Today is also my birthday," I reminded her softly. She paused, blinked as if trying to recall the date, then replied without hesitation. "We can do something later this week. This morning is too busy." I froze. A familiar numbness settled over me. Birthdays rarely meant anything in our house unless they belonged to Liam. I reached for my coat. "I have to get to my first job anyway. You know I work mornings at the cafe." My mother waved a hand dismissively. "You should be grateful your brother does not have to work 2 jobs. He is building a real career." There it was, the usual jab, as if my exhaustion was a personal flaw, as if Liam's privilege was my responsibility. I stepped outside into the cold morning air and headed toward my car. Before leaving, I opened the small bakery box sitting on the passenger seat. Inside was a single cupcake with pale blue frosting. I had bought it for myself the night before because at the very least I wanted someone to give me something today. Even if that someone had to be me. My shift at the cafe was slow. A few regulars came in, wished each other good morning, ordered their usual lattes. Nobody knew it was my birthday, and I did not tell them. Telling people felt like setting myself up for disappointment. I clocked out at noon and returned home, hoping maybe someone in my family remembered. They did not. When I walked through the front door, my father was on the couch watching sports. He did not glance away from the screen. Liam was pacing in the hallway, adjusting his suit jacket. When he saw me, he frowned like I was a problem he needed to solve. "Did you pick up the dry cleaning?" I hesitated. "You did not ask me to." He rolled his eyes. "You never remember anything important. It is my recognition night, Addison. Try to be useful for once." I inhaled, slowly steadying myself. "It is my birthday." The words hung in the air for a moment, almost fragile. My father finally looked away from the TV. "Is it?" he asked, genuinely confused. My mother appeared from the kitchen with a platter of appetizers, annoyance tightening her jaw. "Addison, please." "Do not start. Today is about your brother." A small part of my chest caved in at that. The same part that had been ignored, dismissed, and talked over for years. I carried the appetizers into the dining room because that was what they expected. They never had to ask. I set the table while they fussed over Liam's suit, his hair, his shiny leather shoes. Every moment was about him. It always had been. While they took photos of him standing by the fireplace, I slipped into the kitchen and opened the small white box holding my cupcake. 26, I whispered again. I lit the tiny candle with a match and watched the flame dance. Before I could blow it out, my mother's voice cut into the room. "Addison, we do not have time for that. We need to leave in 20 minutes. Liam laughed when he saw the candle. A mocking laugh. He leaned against the doorframe with his arms crossed. Seriously, you are 26, not 6. Your birthday is meaningless. Do not act like you deserve anything today. The room tilted a little. Not physically, not yet, but emotionally. A wave of shame burned across my stomach. I blew out the candle silently. No wish, no celebration, no acknowledgement from the people who should have cared at least a little. I returned the cupcake to the box and tucked it deep into the trash can. My mother brushed past me. Stop being dramatic, Addison. Help your brother find his keys. We are already behind schedule. I nodded because that was the role I always played. The helpful one, the quiet one, the invisible one, the one whose birthday did not matter. I told myself I was fine. I lied. Growing up in the Clark household meant learning early that love was not divided equally. It was allocated, measured, and handed out according to my parents' definition of worth, and worth always meant Liam. He was the golden child from the moment he learned to walk the proof of my parents' success, the shining example they held up whenever relatives visited. I, on the other hand, was the helper, the reliable background character who existed mostly to make their lives easier. Even as a child, I understood the roles without being told. Liam got attention, praise, new clothes, the last piece of dessert. I got chores, corrections, and expectations. My earliest memories feel lopsided. I remember sitting on the sidelines while my father taught Liam how to throw a baseball, telling him he had perfect form. I remember watching my mother clap and cheer when Liam recited a school poem even though he stumbled on half the words. The first time I learned a full piano song by memory, she barely looked up from folding laundry. That sounds nice, sweetie. Can you go help your brother with his homework? I remembered the sting of that so clearly that even now at 26 the echo of it still pulsed somewhere inside me. It was not that they hated me, it was that they never saw me. In a way, that kind of invisibility hurt more. As we grew older, the gap widened. Liam was allowed to fail without consequences. When he crashed my father's car at 17, they blamed the other driver. When he got caught cheating on an exam, they claimed the teacher had it out for him. When he was rude to waiters, friends, girlfriends, neighbors, my mother always said, "Boys will be boys." The phrase became a shield, thick and impenetrable. I learned early that if I wanted something, I had to earn it myself. If Liam wanted something, he only had to ask. I paid for my own senior year activities by working weekends at the mall. Liam got $1,000 from my parents for a spring break trip with his friends. When my acceptance letter arrived from a nursing program, my father barely skimmed the page before telling me he could not help with tuition. But when Liam wanted to start his sales job across town after dropping out of community college, they covered his gas, his wardrobe, and a new laptop. I should have resented him, but resentment was swallowed by something older, heavier, something that had been building over years of disappointment. The truth was, I envied him. Not for what he had, but for how effortlessly he received it. The favoritism became more obvious when we were adults. After finishing my associate degree, I started working at a cafe while taking night classes for nursing. Between student loans, rent, and car repairs, I could not afford to live alone. When I moved back home, I expected things to be better. Adults now, more mature, more understanding. I was wrong. My parents treated my return as a given, not a request. They assumed I would handle laundry dinners, grocery runs, and errands because I was home more often. They never considered that I was exhausted from double shifts and night classes. And Liam, still living at home despite having a full-time job, benefited from every moment of my presence. He left dishes everywhere, tossed laundry around, and never cleaned after himself. Whenever I asked for help, he snapped that he was too busy with his real job. Busy as in selling insurance policies he barely understood. My parents bought every excuse he gave them. When he forgot to pay his portion of the phone bill, my mother quietly added it to mine. When he dented the side door with his equipment bag, my father said, "Addison, be more careful next time." I was not even home when it happened. It did not matter. The fault belonged to me by default. There were moments when I saw glimpses of the truth the way people outside our family reacted. Teachers had always told me I was responsible, a hard worker, someone dependable. Employers praised my work ethic. Friends noticed how often I apologized for things that were not my fault. A therapist I saw briefly in college told me I carried something called parentification trauma. a term that felt both too clinical and painfully accurate. I brushed it aside back then, but living at home again under the same roof where all of it started, the patterns returned instantly. I could feel myself shrinking into old roles without trying. Liam would slam a door, and I would instinctively check if the hinges were loose. My mother would complain about her errands, and I would grab my keys to handle them. My father would ask why dinner was not ready, and I would apologize before reminding myself I was 26, not a teenager. The truth was simple. I did not have a home. I had a place my body went when I was too tired to fight the world, but it was never built to hold me only to serve Liam. Every corner of the house reminded me that I was expected to support him, cover for him, lift him up, smooth out his problems, all while asking for nothing in return. That was the root of everything that happened later that night. The shove, the fall, the concussion, the fact that they left me on the floor and walked out the door without looking back. It was not one moment. It was years of conditioning. Years of favoritism so powerful that even I believed sometimes that my needs were less important. Even on my birthday. Especially on my birthday. My family raised Liam like he was irreplaceable. They raised me like I was optional. The afternoon of my birthday dragged in that heavy, sinking way that only disappointment can create. I had hoped foolishly that something might shift once the morning passed. Maybe someone in my family would remember the date. Maybe my mother would suddenly turn around and say she planned a small dinner. Maybe my father would walk into the kitchen holding a card he claimed he forgot to hand me earlier. I wanted something. Anything. Even the smallest gesture would have meant more than they understood. Instead, when I returned from the cafe around 3, the house buzzed with a kind of chaotic excitement that belonged entirely to Liam. I stepped inside and found my mother rushing between the kitchen and dining room, carrying trays of appetizers. My father stood near the mantel, adjusting Liam's certificate announcement, a cheap printout inside a glossy frame. Liam paced in front of the hallway mirror, running his hands through his hair, checking his reflection from every angle like he was preparing for a magazine cover shoot instead of a regional sales recognition. No one noticed me at first. They moved around me like I was a piece of furniture they had grown used to navigating. I slipped off my shoes and tried again. "I am home." My mother glanced up for half a second but did not stop moving. "Good, you can help get the table set. We need to leave soon." I exhaled. It was not even an acknowledgement. It was an assignment. My father tapped the picture frame twice and said, "This needs to look perfect for tonight." Liam nodded with an air of importance that felt absurd. Later, when I carried a stack of plates toward the dining table, I glanced at them both. "Have you all eaten lunch?" My father sighed impatiently. "Eating does not matter right now. Tonight is the focus." My mother chimed in from the kitchen without turning around. "Liam will be giving a speech. We need to make sure nothing goes wrong before the event." Everything revolved around him. The energy, the preparations, the pressure, the praise. I placed the plates down and forced myself to ask the question I already knew the answer to. "Are we having dinner here before leaving?" My mother finally turned to look at me, her expression tightening with irritation, as if the question itself was selfish. "We do not have time for that. We need to leave by 5 to make sure Liam arrives early." Liam stepped into the dining room tugging at his suit jacket like he was modeling it. "Tonight is important. Do not make things complicated." His tone carried a warning more than a request. I tried again, gently. "I just thought maybe we could sit together for a bit. Even something small. It is my birthday." The room stilled for one uncomfortable moment. My father paused, glanced between us, and inhaled sharply like he realized he had forgotten something he should not have forgotten. Then he made an awkward attempt. "Oh, right. Happy birthday, kiddo." The way he said it made it sound like a perfunctory apology more than a celebration. My mother sighed loudly, placing her hands on her hips. "Addison, we cannot shift everything because of you. Liam has worked hard for this night." "Have you?" I asked quietly. My mother blinked. "What?" "Have you considered that maybe we could spare 10 minutes? Just 10 minutes to cut a cake or something simple." I pointed at the trash can before I could stop myself where the cupcake box sat crushed beneath paper towels and vegetable peels. I had taken it out earlier to throw something else away and saw the smudged blue frosting stuck to cardboard. I put my hands behind my back so she would not see them shake. It does not have to be big. Just a moment. Liam let out a laugh that sounded like mockery. Your birthday is meaningless. His words were clear, sharp, and intended to land exactly where they did. You act like you deserve a parade for turning 26. No one cares. Stop acting special. My chest tightened. The familiar shame crept up my throat. I looked at my father for any hint of disagreement, any sign he might step in, but he only shook his head as if tired of the entire situation. Addison, do not start an argument on a night like this. My mother crossed her arms, her voice rising. We do not need drama. Help your brother find his keys so we can leave. I wanted to ask why everything I did was labeled dramatic when all I wanted was the bare minimum of human kindness. But it would not have mattered. I had learned long ago that in our house, Liam's needs were urgent and mine were inconvenient. My mother busied herself again, wiping down the counters with frantic energy. Liam kept staring at me with that mixture of arrogance and dismissal that had been trained into him by years of undeserved praise. I tried one last time, speaking softer, calmer, hoping they might hear something different in my tone. I do not need a big dinner. I do not need gifts. I just thought maybe we could acknowledge the day. We can acknowledge it later this week, my mother snapped. You know Liam cannot be late. Somehow that sentence stung more deeply than all the others. Later this week? Not now. Not today. Not on my birthday. Liam rolled his eyes and muttered unreal before brushing past me so hard that I stumbled a little. My mother noticed the stumble but did not react. Instead, she grabbed her purse and called out, "Everyone ready! We need to go!" That was it. That was the end of the discussion. My birthday had not only failed to matter, it had been treated like an inconvenience. The disappointment that settled in my chest felt familiar but heavier this time. Maybe because I had allowed myself a moment of hope. A moment that collapsed as quickly as it had formed. I looked around the house, the place that was supposed to be home, and realized that in every room I was a ghost. Not quite seen, not quite wanted, not quite part of the family they were so eager to present to the world. The tension in the house thickened as evening approached, settling into the corners like humidity before a storm. Liam moved from room to room with restless irritation, opening drawers, slamming cabinets, muttering under his breath, as though the entire world existed for the sole purpose of frustrating him. I kept my distance at first, clearing the dining room table and gathering leftover items from my mother's frantic preparations. I wanted to avoid him, but avoidance never lasted long in our house. Not when Liam was wound tight, and tonight he was stretched to snapping. When he stomped back into the hallway, his voice boomed through the house. Where are my keys? I need my keys right now. I froze. The question was loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear. I answered cautiously. Did you check your room? He shot me a glare so sharp it made my stomach twist. If they were in my room, I would not be asking you. My mother rushed out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. Liam, sweetie, calm down. We will help you find them. They always call him sweetie when he yelled. They always told him to calm down in that gentle tone. They never spoke to me that way. I repeated myself. Maybe check the counter. I saw something metal earlier. Liam stormed toward me, his footsteps heavy. Do not tell me what to check. You probably moved them like you always do. He loomed over me, anger radiating off him in waves. His height, his broad shoulders, his quick temper. He used all of it like weapons. I felt my pulse rise. I have not touched your things, Liam. Maybe you left them in your jacket pocket. He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the heat of his breath. Close enough that there was no reason for him to stand that near except to intimidate. Stop acting like you know everything. You never help. You only get in the way. My father entered the room from behind Liam, arms crossed as if ready to judge a competition rather than diffuse a conflict. Addison, just help him look. We are already behind schedule. Of course, because everything was always my responsibility. Every forgotten item, every small inconvenience, every flaw in Liam's world somehow became my fault. My mother added, You really need to be more considerate tonight. Your brother has worked hard for this. My jaw tensed. He works at an insurance office. It is not exactly a national award ceremony. The sentence slipped out before I could stop it. Liam froze. His eyes narrowed into slits. What did you just say? I swallowed, regretting the honesty instantly. I did not mean anything by it. I just meant this is not worth yelling over. His voice rose. You think my night is not important. You think your birthday matters more than what I accomplished. I opened my mouth, then closed it again, trying to choose words that would not inflame the situation. I did not say that. You implied it. He stepped even closer, invading my personal space the way he always did when he wanted control. My mother's warning voice came from behind him. Liam, honey, calm down. But her words never reached him. Not really. My father chimed in, sounding more annoyed than concerned. Addison, stop making everything about you. That was the spark that lit the fuse. All day I had tried to stay quiet. I had tried to be invisible. I had tried to swallow the disappointment, the humiliation, the way everyone dismissed my birthday like it was a chore, the cupcake in the trash, the forgotten morning, the fake apology from my father, Liam calling my birthday meaningless. All of it came back at once. I finally said the truth. I am not making things about me. I am just tired of being treated like I do not matter. The room dropped into a stunned silence. My father stiffened. My mother's mouth opened as if she had witnessed a betrayal. Liam laughed a low, mocking sound. Treated like you do not matter. That is because you do not do anything that matters. He pressed a finger against my forehead like I was a child he could scold physically. And you picked the worst night to be selfish. I slapped his hand away. Do not touch me. That set him off. His face tightened as if a door inside him slammed shut. He raised his voice to a roar. Stop acting like the world owes you anything. Your birthday is meaningless. You hear me? Meaningless. My chest tightened, but I did not back away. I stood my ground. Maybe to prove something to myself. Maybe because I was too tired to keep shrinking. You do not get to decide what is meaningful to me. He scoffed. You think today matters. You think you matter. You are delusional. I took a step backward, not out of fear, but because his anger advanced like a tide. His shoulders squared, his fists clenched. My mother gasped. Liam, stop. But he did not. He took another step toward me, then another. He cornered me near the entryway table. I could feel the wall pressing against my back. His voice dropped to something darker, something controlled, something dangerous. You ruin every moment in this house. You ruin everything for us. I whispered, terrified, but refusing to let him see it. I have ruined nothing. I have only ever helped all of you. That made him snap. You are a burden, a nothing, a problem. I felt the impact before I processed the movement. Not a punch. Not exactly. More like a hard shove with enough force behind it to send my balance lurching. My heel slipped on the edge of the rug. The room tilted. The side of my head struck the corner of the entryway table. Light exploded behind my eyes. My mother screamed my name, but her voice felt far away. My father cursed under his breath, not in concern, but in frustration. Liam stood over me for a split-second, panic flickering across his eyes, then vanished as he turned toward the door. The last thing I heard before everything went black was my mother's voice snapping sharply. We do not have time for this. We need to go. Then the sound of the door closing. They left. The moment my head hit the corner of the entryway table, everything inside me seemed to scatter like glass shattering on tile. A burst of light flashed behind my eyes, then a rolling wave of dizziness crashed through me. My knees buckled. I felt my body tilt sideways before gravity dragged me down. The rug slipped under my palms when I tried to steady myself, but my limbs were slow and unfocused like they no longer belonged to me. The floor rushed up at an angle, and for one split second I saw Liam's face hovering above mine, contorted with something he rarely let slip, fear. But it vanished almost instantly, replaced by the familiar mask of frustration, the same mask he used whenever he made a mistake and refused to take responsibility for it. My mother's gasp echoed faintly behind him, thin and brittle, as if even her concern was performative. Mark's voice followed, sharp and annoyed rather than worried. What the hell, Addison? His words stabbed through the fog but did nothing to pull me back. My vision flickered. Liam's shadow leaned over me, then abruptly retreated as if proximity alone might assign guilt. I heard him mutter something about being late, about how this was exactly the type of attention-seeking nonsense he expected from me tonight. The sound distorted as my ears buzzed a static hum, swallowing pieces of the conversation. My mother's footsteps clicked frantically across the hardwood floor as she hovered near my head. She crouched for only a moment. "Addison, get up! You are fine!" Her voice trembled, but not out of love or fear. It trembled because she was torn between two instincts, the instinct to look like a good mother and the instinct to race out the door to preserve Liam's perfect evening. In the end, the second instinct always won. I tried to speak, but the words tangled on my tongue. My lips parted, yet no sound emerged. My body refused to move. "Stay still," my brain begged, but my mother's voice sliced through the haze again. "Do not ruin this. Not tonight." Liam paced through the room, running both hands through his hair with frantic annoyance. "We need to leave, Mom. I told you she was going to pull something like this." My father let out a breath full of irritation. "We are already late. He is expecting us. We cannot miss the ceremony. The ceremony, the certificate, the restaurant celebration. Balloons, overpriced appetizers, a speech that Liam probably rehearsed for weeks. All of it mattered more than the fact that their daughter lay motionless on the living room floor. My mother stood over me. Her expression was a mixture of desperation and dismissal. She lowered her voice, speaking quickly, almost sweating with panic. "Addison, get up! Come on, you are embarrassing us!" But my limbs would not obey. My head pulsed with a throbbing ache that radiated across my skull. A wave of nausea rose from my stomach, and a cold sweat broke across my forehead. I closed my eyes, trying to anchor myself to something steady. Her voice sharpened. "Addison, enough! You are being dramatic." Liam pressed a hand to his forehead. "Seriously. She does this every time something is not about her." I could not even lift my hand to defend myself. I could barely breathe through the spinning room. My father walked toward the door, grabbing his jacket and keys. "Come on, let's go." "We cannot let this throw off the whole night." My mother hesitated only a moment longer. I felt her presence above me, a fleeting shadow on my skin. Her fingers hovered near my shoulder as if she considered touching me, but she pulled back at the last second. "Liam is getting anxious," she whispered, as if I was the burden. "We need to leave now, or he will be upset all night." She straightened her dress, smoothed her hair, and turned away. Liam was already at the doorway. He looked back once, and instead of guilt, his expression twisted with disgust. "She does not deserve to ruin this for me." Mark opened the door, letting in the cool, early evening air. Linda stepped outside first, still glancing around to make sure no neighbors were watching. Liam followed, adjusting his jacket and shaking his head. My father closed the door behind them, and the sound echoed down the hallway like a final, definitive verdict. They left. They left me lying on the floor of our home unconscious on my birthday, without calling for help, without hesitation, without a backward glance. The silence that followed was deafening. The house settled into stillness, broken only by the faint hum of the refrigerator and my slowing breaths. Darkness swelled at the edges of my vision, my forehead pressed against the rug, the fibers scratchy beneath my cheek. I tried to move a finger, then a hand, then an arm, but my body felt as heavy and unresponsive as wet sand. Seconds drifted into minutes. The light outside faded. My consciousness thinned like a flickering candle. Somewhere in the blur, I thought I heard a knock. Then another, a door creaking open. A hesitant voice calling my name from far away. "Addison. Honey, are you all right?" Mrs. Delaney, the neighbor who always brought us homemade fudge at Christmas. The neighbor who once told me I deserved better. I wanted to answer her, but everything slipped away into darkness before I could. The darkness that swallowed me after my family left felt thick and endless, like sinking into deep water with no sense of where the surface was. Time disappeared. At some point, faint sounds began slipping through the fog in my mind. A distant knocking, a creak, a voice calling my name, muted but persistent. "Addison. Sweetheart, are you in there?" The voice belonged to Mrs. Delaney, our 60-year-old neighbor who lived 2 houses down. She was the kind of woman who remembered birthdays, watered flowers for traveling neighbors, and baked holiday treats, even for people who forgot to thank her. I tried to lift my head, but the attempt dissolved into another rush of dizziness. A low groan escaped me, the only sound I could manage. The front door creaked again, followed by quick, uncertain footsteps. Addison! Honey, can you hear me? Her voice wavered with a mixture of concern and fear. I heard the soft thud of something dropping to the floor, maybe the grocery bag she always carried. When she hurried toward me, her breath caught. Oh, dear Lord! Addison! What happened? She knelt beside me, her hands trembling as she gently touched my shoulder. Her touch was light, careful, as though she feared hurting me more. I forced my eyes open for a split second, just enough to catch a blurry view of her face hovering over mine. Her lips parted in shock. Your head, your color. Sweetheart, you look awful. Stay with me, okay? Stay with me. I could not speak. I could barely breathe. She rummaged through her purse and pulled out her phone with shaking fingers. I heard her voice rise as she dialed emergency services. Yes, I need an ambulance. A young woman is unconscious. She hit her head. She is not responding properly. Please send someone quickly. She paused as the operator asked questions. Yes, she is breathing but barely. No, her family is not here. I think they left. Yes, left. The word hit my chest, even though I already knew it was true. Mrs. Delaney reached for my wrist to check my pulse. Her hand was warm steady despite her nerves. Addison, sweetheart, squeeze my fingers if you can hear me. I tried. Maybe I succeeded. Maybe my hand twitched. Her voice softened. That is it. Stay with me. I am right here. While she stayed with me, she continued speaking, perhaps for both our sakes. You poor thing. I saw your folks leaving in such a rush. They nearly ran me over backing out of the driveway. Not a word. Not even a hello. I should have checked sooner. I am so sorry, honey. I did not expect to find you like this. Her voice cracked, but she kept going. Her words floated above me, breaking through the fog in fragments. Then the distant wail of sirens grew closer, rising through the quiet of the evening. The flashing red lights painted the walls in pulses that matched the throbbing in my head. I heard the screech of the ambulance brakes in front of the house, then heavy boots running across the porch. The front door opened wider. Paramedics rushed in with a stretcher and medical bags. What do we have? A male paramedic knelt beside me, checking my pupils with a bright light that stabbed through the haze. Hit her head. Found unconscious. Pupils sluggish. Possible concussion or worse. Female paramedic unfolded a neck brace and slid it carefully under my jaw. Can you tell us your name? My mouth felt full of sand. I managed to form one broken word. Addison. Good. You are doing great, Addison. Stay awake for us, okay? My vision drifted again. The paramedics exchanged urgent looks. They lifted me onto the stretcher with measured precision. The shift in movement made nausea coil through my body. I could not tell if I was shivering or if the world itself was trembling. As they wheeled me toward the door, I heard Mrs. Delaney's voice behind them. Is she going to be all right? I found her on the floor. No family around. They left an hour ago. One paramedic responded with a tight voice. We will take care of her, ma'am. Thank you for calling. She stepped outside into the cool evening air with us, her worry etched deeply across her face, her hands clasped together as if in prayer. I will follow you to the hospital, she said, her voice cracking. She is all alone. The paramedics loaded me into the ambulance. The doors slammed shut with a thud that vibrated through my bones. Inside, everything smelled of disinfectant and metal. A paramedic placed an oxygen mask over my face while another strapped me in. Addison, stay with me. You are in an ambulance. We are taking you to the emergency room. You are going to be okay. Through the haze, I heard someone ask, Do we have contact information for her family? The male paramedic responded. Her neighbor said her family left the house before she found her. No one responded to the door. The silence that followed was thick with disbelief. Even the paramedics, who had probably seen everything, seemed stunned by the idea of someone being left alone like this. Mrs. Delaney's voice echoed faintly in the background one last time before the ambulance door sealed shut. You are not alone, honey. I am right behind you. And then the sirens wailed again, pulling me into a blur of pain. fear, and an ache far deeper than the injury on my head. The ambulance door swung open with a rush of cool night air that brushed against my skin as the paramedics pulled the stretcher out. The bright exterior lights of the emergency room burned through the haze in my vision, and for a moment, everything felt surreal, like I was floating through a scene happening to someone else. Voices overlapped around me, quick and purposeful. "We have a female mid-20s found unconscious. Possible head injury. Pupils slow. Bring her to trauma bay too." The wheels of the stretcher rattled across the pavement, then settled smoothly as they pushed me through automatic sliding doors. The hospital smelled like bleach and recycled air, sharp enough to sting my nose. A nurse hurried beside the stretcher holding a clipboard. Name: Addison. Age: 26. Mechanism of injury. I heard the male paramedic answer. Found unconscious at home. Neighbor called it in. Possible blunt force from a fall. No family present. The nurse paused for half a second as if that last detail surprised her, but she did not comment. Trauma bay. 2 was a flurry of movement. A doctor stepped forward, snapping on gloves. His voice was calm but efficient. "Let's get her vitals. Blood pressure, heart rate, oxygen. Start fluids. Order a CT scan." As hands moved around me, adjusting equipment, placing stickers on my chest, lifting my eyelids, my senses came and went in flashes. Someone placed a thermometer under my tongue. Another tightened the blood pressure cuff until my arm throbbed. A nurse pressed 2 fingers against my wrist, counting quietly. I tried to focus on her voice. "You are doing okay, Addison. Stay with us." I wanted to ask questions. I wanted to know what time it was, how long I had been unconscious, whether someone had called my family or if anyone even cared. But the words felt trapped somewhere deep inside me, stuck behind pain and fear. The doctor leaned over me. "Addison, can you tell me what hurts?" My throat was dry, but I managed one word. "Head." He nodded. "Do you remember falling?" I forced my eyes open, trying to pull fragments of memory together. "My brother," I whispered. The doctor paused, exchanging a quick glance with the nurse. "Did someone hurt you?" The question hovered between us like a fragile balloon. My chest tightened. I wanted to tell the truth. I wanted to say Liam shoved me, that my parents walked away, that tonight was supposed to be my birthday, and I had spent the day being ignored and belittled until everything snapped. But guilt weighed heavier than honesty. Years of conditioning made me whisper a different answer. I fell. The doctor did not push, but his expression said he heard the lie. He simply nodded. "We will run some tests to be sure. Do not worry, you are safe now." A soft beep came from the monitor behind me. The nurse glanced at it and adjusted something on the IV pole. Another nurse appeared by my side, her hands warm as she helped stabilize my head before they rolled my stretcher toward radiology. The hallway lights passed overhead in long, bright streaks, and the motion made my nausea return. When we reached the CT scan room, a technician helped shift me onto a narrow table. "This might feel a little cold," he said as he placed a stabilizing cushion near my neck. I closed my eyes when the table slid into the circular machine. The hum of the scanner vibrated through me like distant thunder. "Hold very still," the technician instructed. "The scan only takes a few minutes." Alone inside the machine, the fear crept deeper. Not only fear of the injury, but fear of what awaited me when the night ended. Or rather, what did not await me. No anxious parent in the waiting room. No sibling pacing outside the bay. No one asking if I was conscious or alive. When the scan ended, they wheeled me back to the ER bay. The doctor returned with the results. Good news. No skull fracture. Mild concussion, some swelling. "We will monitor you for a few hours." Relief washed over me, but it was quickly replaced by an ache that had nothing to do with the injury. A different nurse approached with a small tablet in her hands. "Would you like us to contact any family members?" My stomach twisted. The truth felt humiliating. My family left me before I was taken here. "They were busy." She paused. "Busy? Did they know you were injured?" I nodded weakly, though I was not sure they understood anything beyond their schedule for the night. The nurse hesitated before speaking again. "Would you like to call anyone else? A friend? A coworker? Someone who can sit with you?" My throat tightened. My mind searched for names but came up empty. "Jenna," I whispered, barely audible. A coworker, but I do not know if she is working tonight. The nurse wrote down the name anyway. We can try to reach her. While she stepped away, I glanced at my phone resting on the small rolling tray. Notifications still flooded the screen from earlier, each one, a colorful reminder of what my family was doing while I lay unconscious. More pictures, more celebration, more pride for Liam's pretend achievement. I scrolled slowly. In one photo, my mother held up a wine glass with a caption, celebrating our amazing son. So proud tonight. Another image showed Liam cutting a cake with an oversized knife, smiling at the camera like he was the center of the universe. The comments underneath made my chest ache. What a wonderful family. You all look so happy. Addison nowhere in sight. Not one question about me. Not one sign of worry. Not one acknowledgement that I existed at all. My vision blurred as tears pricked the corners of my eyes. The nurse returned and gently handed me a cup of ice water. She spoke softly like she knew something inside me was breaking. You are doing really well, Addison. You are safe here. It was strange, I thought, how a stranger could make me feel safer in a moment than my own family had my entire life. I lay in the hospital bed, staring at the dim glow of my phone screen, the room humming around me with the sterile predictability of an ER at night. Nurses moved in and out of bays, monitors beeped rhythmically, and someone down the hall coughed in short bursts. But none of it felt real. The only thing that seemed sharp and painfully alive was the stream of posts filling my screen. Photo after photo of my family celebrating Liam. They were smiling so brightly their eyes crinkled. My mother had fixed her hair into the soft curls she usually reserved for holidays. My father wore his navy blazer, the one he brought out for graduations and fancy dinners. And Liam stood between them, chin lifted proudly, holding his cheap certificate like it was a golden trophy. The caption under one of the photos read, "Our shining star." So proud of his accomplishments tonight. Underneath, comments flooded in. Congratulations, Liam. You deserve this. Such a handsome young man. What a wonderful night for your family. Not one person asked where I was. Not one person seemed to notice the absence of the family's only daughter. Maybe they did not know it was my birthday at all. My mother had certainly never posted about that. I scrolled again, my thumb trembling slightly. A video autoplayed. My mother panned the camera around the restaurant, capturing cheers and balloons. Liam beamed at the camera. Thank you all for supporting me. Big things ahead. Then my mother's voice chimed in. We are so happy to celebrate our boy tonight. Our family is complete. Complete. The word sliced through me like something sharp and cold. I closed my eyes for a moment, steadying my breath. The nurse beside me glanced at the monitors. Try to relax, Addison. Your heart rate is elevated. I nodded, even though it was impossible. My heart was beating like I had sprinted up a hill. The nurse stepped away, leaving me alone again with the images of a celebration I had never been a part of. When I opened my eyes, a new notification blinked. My mother had posted again. A group picture taken outside the restaurant, the streetlight casting a warm glow on them. In this one, Liam had his arms around both my parents. They leaned into him like they were posing for a Christmas card. Another caption, "A perfect night with our perfect son." Someone in the comments asked, "Where is your daughter?" My mother replied within minutes, "Oh, Addison needed some space tonight. She is fine." Space. I could almost hear her smug voice saying it, as if she had thoughtfully given me room to breathe, not left me unconscious on the floor. My stomach twisted. I clicked to read more comments. Most people simply accepted her explanation. Some even praised her understanding. You are such a good mom, giving your kids what they need. So supportive. A few relatives added heart emojis and encouragement for Liam. Not a single one questioned the story. Not a single one asked what had really happened. Another photo popped up from my cousin Haley. It was a screenshot from my mother's Facebook story showing Liam blowing out candles on a cake. The cake had 2 numbers on top 27. That was his age. His new year was being celebrated on the day of mine. She captioned it, "Happy early birthday to the best guy." They moved my birthday aside and replaced it with his. Something inside me cracked, not loudly, not violently, more like a quiet fracture I could feel somewhere deep in my chest. A nurse walked by and glanced at my screen. She paused. "That your family?" I nodded. Her eyes softened. "They seem to be having a good time." I swallowed the bitterness rising in my throat. "They always have a good time when it is about him." She hesitated, then spoke in a gentle, cautious tone. "And when it is about you," I forced a small, brittle smile. "They do not believe things should ever be about me." I thought she might walk away then, but she stayed a moment longer. "Families can be complicated." She said it quietly, as though she sensed the layers beneath my understatement. After she left, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from one of my aunts. "Happy birthday, Addison. Hope you had a lovely day." I stared at the message for a long time. She had meant well. She did not know anything. My mother had probably told her some version of the truth that made me look ungrateful or dramatic. The screen buzzed again. A new comment appeared under my mother's post. Someone had written, "I thought today was Addison's birthday too." There was a pause before my mother responded. She said Addison wanted to be alone tonight. Please respect her privacy. A pulse of anger rose in my throat. Alone. As if I had chosen solitude. As if I had decided to collapse on the living room floor. As if I had ignored their calls instead of the truth they had walked out without a second glance. I typed a reply out of instinct, but my thumb hovered above the send button. What would be the point? My mother would twist the narrative anyway. She always did. Another notification lit the screen. A distant cousin replied to my mother. "It is good she took time for herself. She is very emotional sometimes." The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. Emotional. That was the label they always gave me. If I cried, I was dramatic. If I spoke, I was rude. If I needed anything, I was needy. Meanwhile, Liam's outbursts were passion. His arrogance was confidence. His aggression was ambition. I locked my phone because the ache in my chest was becoming unbearable. The ceiling above me blurred slightly as tears slipped down my temples. I wiped them quickly, embarrassed, even though no one was watching. A nurse brought me a warm blanket and draped it over me. Her voice was soft. "Try to rest." I nodded, even though rest felt impossible with the weight of everything pressing down on me. In the dark quiet of the ER, the truth settled like a stone in my stomach. My family was out there celebrating a night built entirely around my brother while pretending I had chosen to vanish. They had rewritten the story before it was even finished, but stories have a way of unraveling, especially when the truth starts leaking through the cracks. And tonight, whether they realized it or not, the cracks had already begun to form. I was drifting somewhere between exhaustion and numbness when I heard a soft knock against the hospital curtain, a polite little tap that did not match the chaos of the ER around me. At first, I thought it was another nurse coming to check my vitals, but when the curtain slid open, I saw someone I did not expect. Aunt Sharon stepped inside slowly, as if she were entering a sacred place instead of a fluorescent-lit hospital bay at 9 in the evening. She looked exactly the same as she always did in the comforting way that made her presence feel like a warm quilt around bruised skin. Her gray, streaked hair was tied back in a low twist, her brown coat draped over her shoulders like she had rushed out of her house the second she heard. The moment her eyes landed on me, her breath caught, not dramatically, but enough for me to see the shock ripple through her. "Addison, sweetheart," she whispered, and her voice cracked. I tried to straighten a little, but the movement made my ribs twinge, and she raised a hand gently. "Do not move if it hurts." She came closer, her eyes scanning the bruise on my cheek, the faint swelling near my temple, the IV taped against my arm. For a long moment, she simply looked at me, and something in her expression made my throat tighten. It was concern, real concern, the kind that feels like it wraps itself around your heart and holds it steady. "What happened to you?" She asked it quietly, like she already feared the answer. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. Shame curled through me, sharp and sour. Even though I knew none of this was my fault, I still felt that instinctive urge to downplay everything to protect the people who had abandoned me hours earlier. I must have slipped, I began, but Aunt Sharon raised one eyebrow in that way she always did when she knew someone was lying. "Addison." Her tone softened, but she did not back down. I have known you since you were a baby. You do not end up in the ER with injuries like that because you slipped. The lump in my throat grew heavier. She reached out and took my hand, gently holding it with the kind of careful warmth I had not felt from any family member in years. I waited, giving her a chance to pull away to scold, to ask if I had done something to cause this. Instead, she squeezed my hand. "Tell me the truth, sweetheart. What did they do?" Hearing her say they made something inside me crack open, I did not give her details, not right away, but I told her enough. That Liam got angry, that he shoved me, that I hit my head, that my parents left for his celebration without checking if I was okay. I watched her face change slowly through every stage of disbelief, horror, heartbreak, and fury. When I finished, she closed her eyes for a moment, steadying herself. Then she let out a long breath, the kind of breath someone releases after holding back anger for too long. "I always knew they favored that boy. But this," she shook her head, "this is abuse. It has been abuse for years." I looked away, embarrassed, but she shifted closer and gently cupped my chin, turning my face back toward her. "Addison, you are not imagining things. You are not dramatic. You are not overreacting. What happened to you is wrong." It was the first time any adult in my family had ever said those words to me. My chest tightened with a rush of relief so overwhelming it almost hurt. She looked around the room, her eyes taking in the medical equipment and the faint bruising along my ribs. "Where are they?" Her voice went cold, like steel dipped in ice. "Your parents." I swallowed. "They are at Liam's event." She blinked once slowly, like she needed a second to register the absurdity. Then her jaw tightened. "They left you here alone on your birthday and went to celebrate him." I nodded. She opened her mouth, closed it, then let out a sound that was somewhere between a gasp and a scoff. "That is beyond neglect. That is cruelty." For a few moments, she paced the small space between the bed and the curtain, her heels clicking sharply against the tile. I had never seen Aunt Sharon angry like this, not even during family arguments or holiday blow-ups. When she finally stopped pacing, she came back to my bedside and took my hand again. "Listen to me, Addison. Things are going to change after this. You hear me? You are not going back to that house, not after what they allowed to happen." I stared at her, stunned, because those were the exact words I had been too afraid to think. The idea of leaving had always felt like a dream, just out of reach, something I did not deserve. But hearing her say it out loud made it feel real, possible, safe. She continued, her voice fierce. "I am taking you home with me as soon as they release you. I do not care what your mother says. I do not care what your father says. They do not get to decide anything anymore. You are an adult, and you have been treated like a servant, not a daughter." The tears came, then silently slipping down my cheeks before I could wipe them away. She sat beside me and gently brushed my hair away from my forehead the way she used to when I was little and had fevers or nightmares. "You deserved better than them. You have always deserved better." Her voice softened again, but there was steel underneath. "And I am going to make sure you get it." As she held my hand and the hospital machines beeped around us for the first time that night, I felt the smallest flicker of something I had not allowed myself to feel in years: hope. When Aunt Sharon finally stepped out to speak with a nurse, the curtain slid shut behind her, and I was alone again with the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor and the sterile hum of the overhead lights. The quiet settled heavy in the room, pressing into the spaces where denial used to live. I stared at the ceiling, its pale tiles blurring into a mosaic of fractured memories, each one forming a picture I had spent years refusing to see clearly. For most of my life, I had told myself that my family was complicated, not cruel, that their demands were normal, that their neglect was accidental, that their anger was just stress. But lying there with half my body throbbing and a bruise pulsing above my eyebrow, I began replaying moments I had buried so deeply that even thinking about them now felt like pulling out splinters. I remembered being 16 when Liam smashed my phone against the wall because I would not give him my charger, and my mother told me to stop being dramatic. I remembered missing a school field trip because my parents made me stay home and watch Liam while they went to a casino, telling me I was old enough to sacrifice a little. I remembered paying the electric bill when I was 19 because my dad forgot, and when the lights flickered back on, no one said thank you. I remembered being 21 and working double shifts only to come home to Liam screaming that I had bought the wrong brand of cereal. He threw the box at me, hitting my shoulder hard. Mom slapped the counter and said, "Addison, please stop provoking him." Every memory slammed into me with brutal clarity. I had been raised not as a daughter, but as a buffer, a helper, a problem solver, an unpaid maid in my own home, a convenient emotional sponge that kept the rest of them from dealing with their own failures. I sucked in a shaky breath as another memory surfaced. Last winter, I had to miss a coworker's holiday party because my mother called crying, saying she needed help prepping a dinner for Mark's boss. I rushed home, still wearing my apron from the cafe job, only to find my mother comfortably sipping wine while I cooked, cleaned, decorated, and served. When the guests arrived, she told them proudly, "Addison loves hosting." She insisted on helping. I remembered birthdays past too, each one quieter and smaller than the last. When I was 8, my birthday cake was a store-bought one with my name spelled wrong. When I was 12, they forgot until evening. When I was 17, my mother told me to stop expecting special treatment, that birthdays were for kids. When I was 23, Liam demanded I give him my car for the night because he had plans. And this year at 25, my birthday ended in the ER, while my parents toasted my brother at an event that meant nothing to anyone except Liam's ego. My chest tightened painfully as the truth settled inside me like a stone, sinking to the bottom of a lake. They never forgot. They never overlooked. They never slipped up. They simply never cared. Not the way parents should. Not the way any decent human being should. And I had spent years bending myself into shapes that made their indifference easier for them to maintain. I thought of the way Liam yelled at me, the way he stepped into my space like he owned it, the way he shoved me because he could not find his keys. I realized with a jolt that this was not the first time he had gotten physical. It was just the first time I could not brush it off. The bruise on my ribs, the pounding in my skull, the blackout. These were not accidents. These were patterns. Patterns my parents ignored. Patterns they excused. Patterns they enabled. My breath trembled as I touched the bandage at my temple. It felt foreign and yet terribly familiar, like an echo of 1,000 injuries I had shrugged off as clumsiness or bad luck. And suddenly, the guilt I had been carrying for years began to break apart piece by piece. It was not my fault that Liam was cruel. It was not my fault that my parents adored him and disregarded me. It was not my fault that I worked 2 jobs while Liam coasted through life like the world owed him something. It was not my fault I ended up here. The realization hit so sharply that my throat tightened. I had been conditioned to believe that my well-being was secondary, optional, insignificant. I had spent so long trying to be the easy one, the quiet one, the helpful one, the one who did not cause trouble. And what had it earned me? A birthday in the ER, a lifetime of being unseen, abandoned, disposable. My eyes burned, but I refused to cry again. Instead, something else rose inside me. A slow, steady anger, not the explosive kind, but the grounded kind, the kind that grows roots in your chest and straightens your spine from the inside out. It was an anger that came with clarity, with honesty, with the understanding that I did not need to earn love from people who had never offered it freely. I was 25 years old, bruised, exhausted, and finally waking up not just from a concussion, but from the illusion of the family I thought I had. I glanced at my phone on the tray table. Missed calls, voicemails, empty apologies disguised as blame. I did not touch it. Not this time. Not anymore. In that quiet hospital room with monitors humming and the faint scent of antiseptic in the air, I made a promise to myself. I would not shrink again. I would not excuse them again. I would not return to that house as the version of myself they had molded. I would not remain the invisible daughter. I would not be their punching bag, their scapegoat, or their backup plan. I would choose myself, even if it terrified me, especially because it terrified me. After Aunt Sharon returned from talking with the nurse and stepped back out to make a quick phone call, I was left alone again with my thoughts and the low, mechanical beeping that filled the ER like a tired heartbeat. My head throbbed, my ribs ached, and the rest of my body felt like it had been hollowed out and refilled with exhaustion, but something inside me was sharper now, clearer than it had been in years. Maybe it was the concussion, maybe the shock, maybe the unraveling truth I could no longer ignore, or maybe it was the instinctive need to understand just how deep the betrayal truly ran. Whatever it was, I reached for my phone. The screen lit up, illuminating dozens of unanswered texts from relatives praising my brother, more photos of the dinner, and a string of missed calls from my mother that I knew in my gut were not out of concern, but out of fear of how this might look. I set that aside and opened my banking app, telling myself I was just checking to make sure the ER charges would not overdraft my account. But as the numbers loaded, a cold wave rolled through my stomach. My balance was significantly lower than it should have been, even after rent and bills. I blinked, refreshed the screen, and still the number sat there mocking me. I opened the transaction history. There were charges I did not recognize at first, skim small ones at gas stations I had never been to, fast food charges in neighborhoods I had not visited, and several larger purchases from an online electronics store. At first, I thought maybe it was my card being skimmed. I reached for the card in my wallet, pulled it out, turned it over. The expiration date matched. The last 4 digits matched. My chest tightened as my mind began piecing together things I had ignored earlier this month. The day my mother mentioned Liam needed to borrow my card to verify something online. The time Liam asked for my wallet when we were in a rush and I was too tired to question it. The few times I found my purse in a slightly different spot than I remembered leaving it. My pulse sped up. I clicked through more statements, scrolling faster. Grocery receipts from a store near Liam's gym. Amazon orders shipping to my parents' address. A large purchase from an electronics shop 2 towns over. The realization hit with the force of a punch. Liam had been using my card. Not once. Not by accident. Repeatedly. And the worst part was not the money. It was the pattern. The entitlement. The assumption that he could take from me because I would not fight back. I felt nausea climb up my throat, but I pressed on. I clicked into my credit score app. It took longer to load spinning slow circles that taunted me. When it finally opened, my breath stopped. My score had dropped nearly 100 points in the last 6 months. I scrolled through the lines of credit associated with my name. That was when I saw it. A store credit account opened 3 months ago. Not in my handwriting, not under my address, under my mother's. My mother had used my social security number. At first, my brain rejected the idea outright. There had to be a mistake. Maybe an identity theft ring, maybe a mix-up, maybe some glitch, anything other than the truth. But then I remembered the way she insisted she needed to borrow a piece of mail with my SSN on it because she claimed she had to compare paperwork for insurance. How she never returned that envelope. How she brushed me off when I asked about it. How she said, "You do not need to worry about these things yet, Addison. Let me handle it." My hands began shaking. I clicked through the credit report in a frantic blur. Multiple inquiries. A small loan opened under my name. Missed payments. Late fees. My mother had done this. My own mother had used my identity to open accounts, run up balances, and leave me responsible for the fallout. A coldness spread through my chest, deeper than anger, deeper than betrayal. It was a kind of devastation that made everything inside me go still. The financial part was terrible, yes, but the emotional part was worse, because this meant my family had not just dismissed me. They had not just neglected me. They had actively used me. They had taken advantage of the fact that I worked 2 jobs, that I never complained, that I paid my bills on time, that I never asked for anything. They had carved into my resources the way they carved into my time, my energy, my self-worth, without hesitation, without guilt, without even thinking. I would notice. A nurse walking past paused when she saw my face. "Are you okay? You look like you are about to faint." I swallowed hard, forcing air into lungs that felt too tight. "My family," my voice fractured. "They took things from me." She did not pry. Instead, she put a hand on my shoulder and said gently, "Whatever you found, remember, you are not alone tonight. You have support here." The words hit harder than they should have. But before I could say anything back, Aunt Sharon returned, stepping inside with a takeout cup of warm broth she thought I might be able to sip. She froze the second she saw the look on my face. "What is it, sweetheart?" I handed her my phone with trembling fingers. She scrolled slowly. Then her mouth dropped open. Her eyes darkened. She whispered, "Mark and Linda did this to you. They used your social security number. They let Liam drain your account." When she looked back at me, her voice was no longer soft. It was steel reinforced with fire. "This is criminal. They could go to jail for this. And they will. I promise you they will." When Aunt Sharon finished reading through the screen, her hands trembling with a fury she could barely contain, she set my phone gently on the rolling tray beside the bed as if she feared she might crush it if she held it any longer. I expected her to start pacing or calling someone or demanding that the hospital staff bring a police officer immediately. But instead, she sat down slowly in the chair beside me, her breath steadying in long, deliberate pulls. She reached for my hand again, softening her voice. "Addison, sweetheart, you do not have to deal with this alone anymore." I tried to respond, but the words tangled in my chest. My throat tightened with a familiar, suffocating ache. It was the same feeling I used to get when my mother scolded me in the car on the way to school, when my father dismissed my fears as overreacting, when Liam towered over me shouting until my ears rang. It was the conditioned response of someone who had spent their entire life being taught that silence was safer than honesty, that swallowing pain was better than sharing it, that speaking up only led to ridicule or punishment or more cold indifference. Aunt Sharon squeezed my hand gently, grounding me. "When you are ready, we will handle this. Legally. Properly. You deserve justice." The word justice echoed in my mind like a bell rung in a cavern, distant, unfamiliar, but strangely comforting. I inhaled slowly. The hospital room felt heavier, the air thicker, as though speaking anything aloud might cause the world to tilt in ways I was not prepared for. My phone buzzed, then a long vibration that made my heart jump. Aunt Sharon looked at the screen before handing it to me. "It is your mother." Again. I stared at the caller ID glowing across the screen, my name spelled the way she only wrote it when she was angry. I let it ring. When it went to voicemail, the little red icon blinked almost immediately. I hesitated before pressing play. Her voice filled the room sharp and cold and desperate all at once. "Addison, you need to stop this. We heard you left the house with someone. You did not tell us where you were going. This is extremely irresponsible. Call us back immediately." My mother had convinced herself that ignorance was innocence, that if she pretended not to know I had been taken by ambulance, it would absolve her of guilt. Aunt Sharon's eyebrows pulled together in disbelief. "They still have no idea." I shook my head. "No, they know exactly what they are doing. They just do not want responsibility for it." My phone buzzed again. Another voicemail. This time from my father. "Addison, I do not know what your problem is tonight, but you need to stop causing trouble. We already had to calm your mother down. Liam is upset. Call us back." That last part hit me with a kind of hollow absurdity. Liam is upset. I was in the ER with a concussion bandages on my head, bruising down my ribs, and what mattered to him was that Liam's night had not stayed perfectly smooth. A strange calm settled over me, than one I had never felt before during family crises. It was not numbness. It was clarity. I handed the phone back to Aunt Sharon. "I am not calling them." She nodded once, her approval quiet but powerful. "Good. They do not get access to you tonight." Another message arrived moments later, this one from my mother, frantic and manipulative in equal measure. "Addison, I swear to God, if you are doing this for attention, you are going to regret it. We are trying to have a family evening. Your behavior is unacceptable." I deleted it without listening to the rest. Aunt Sharon inhaled sharply. "I cannot believe she said that." "Oh, I can," I whispered. "That is her favorite line. Everything I do is for attention. Everything Liam does is because he is stressed or gifted or misunderstood." My voice wavered. I think I have been conditioned to feel guilty for breathing too loudly. Sharon reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, her face softening. "You have been conditioned to survive in a house that never deserved your gentleness. Now you have a chance to break away." My chest tightened with emotion I had pushed down for years. I opened my mouth. I want... She leaned in closer. Say it, sweetheart. I want to be done. I want out. I want to be finished with them. The words trembled out of me like a confession. For a moment, silence washed through the room. Then Aunt Sharon smiled, not a happy smile, but a fierce, proud one. Good. That is the first real step. My phone buzzed again. Then again. Then again. A barrage of messages began pouring in, probably my parents panicking about appearances now that relatives were asking why I was not responding to birthday messages. I turned the phone face down. I do not want to hear from them ever again, I said quietly, as if saying it too loudly would make it less true. Sharon nodded. You do not have to. They do not get to demand access to you. They do not get to rewrite the story. They do not get to decide who you are anymore. Her words sank into me like medicine repairing pieces of me I had not realized were broken. I lay back against the pillow, exhaustion seeping through my bloodstream, but tempered by a strange sense of control I had never known before. Silence had been forced on me my entire life, but now for the first time, silence was a choice. My choice. A boundary. A shield. And with that, silence came a new kind of power. I was not hiding. I was not retreating. I was refusing to be manipulated, refusing to be scolded, refusing to play the role they had written for me. Aunt Sharon leaned back in the chair, but kept her hand around mine. Rest now. Tomorrow we start something new. I closed my eyes and let the silence deepen around me, letting it become a cocoon instead of a cage. For the first time in my life, my quiet was not submission. It was strength. I was drifting in and out of a restless half-sleep, my head still pounding in a dull rhythmic throb, when Aunt Sharon nudged the chair closer to my bed and said softly, Addison, you need to see this. Her voice carried that careful tone adults use when they are about to reveal something that might sting. I blinked awake and she handed me my phone, the screen already opened to Facebook. For a second, all I saw was the same stream of photos from earlier, my mother smiling beside Liam, my father lifting a champagne glass the cheap certificate held like a priceless award. But something was different now. The comments section below the newest photo had exploded. There were dozens, then hundreds of interactions piling up one after another, the little red notification bubble doubling each time I refreshed. At first, they were the predictable congratulatory messages, but as I scrolled, a new tone appeared. A neighbor someone from down the block commented, I thought I saw an ambulance at your place earlier. Everything okay? My mother had replied almost instantly. Just a misunderstanding. Addison needed time alone tonight. She is fine. The lie sat there like a spark waiting for oxygen. Then beneath it, a reply popped up from someone I recognized vaguely by name. A woman who lived across from us. Is that why she was carried out by paramedics? My breath caught. I stared at the screen so long my vision blurred. My mother had not responded to that one. Another comment appeared. I watched the whole thing from my Ring camera. I can post the clip if needed. My heart slammed against my ribs. No way! My chest tightened as I clicked the comment. It expanded, revealing a short preview thumbnail. I saw the faint outline of our driveway. The timestamp in the corner showed exactly when the ambulance arrived. A shaky video began playing automatically. It was grainy-tinted blue from the night sky, but unmistakable. The paramedics running toward our front door, the stretcher being wheeled out, and then, the haunting part, the moment they carried me down the porch steps, limp and unresponsive, my hair falling across the side of my face. Even through the hazy footage, I looked frighteningly small. Vulnerable, alone. The comments exploded beneath the video. Why wasn't anyone with her? Where was the family? Why didn't they ride with her to the hospital? This is awful. Someone else chimed in. I saw your parents leaving earlier. They rushed out like nothing was wrong. Then came the comment that made my stomach twist. Did no one stay with her? That's neglect. A bold user added. This is abuse. Call it what it is. Aunt Sharon placed a steadying hand on my arm as my breathing hitched. Keep reading, she whispered, and I did, even though every word sliced deeper. Someone else responded to the thread. Actually, I have video too. My Ring camera caught them leaving the house earlier. The comment expanded into another clip. In it, my parents and Liam rushed out the front door. They looked annoyed, impatient, irritated. Liam was smoothing his jacket, my mother checking her makeup reflection in the door. Not one of them looked back. Not even once. The clip ended with them driving off, headlights sweeping across the driveway. The silence after the video was suffocating. Then the comments came like a tidal wave. "This is horrifying. How do you leave someone unconscious? On her birthday." I knew something was off with that family. Poor girl. She deserves better. Someone tag her. Does she need help? Do we call authorities? Aunt Sharon exhaled slowly. The truth is out now. There is no hiding this. My phone buzzed again. Dozens of messages from people I barely knew. "Addison, are you okay? We saw the video. Do you need somewhere to stay? Are you safe?" And then a voicemail notification from my mother. I hesitated before pressing play, but Aunt Sharon nodded as if to say, "Hear it for what it is, not what they want it to be." My mother's voice burst from the speaker in a sharp, panicked whisper. "Addison, delete those comments. I don't know what you told people, but you need to fix this right now. You are humiliating us. You are making us look abusive. Call me back." My fingers tightened around the phone. She still did not ask if I was alive. She only cared about appearances. Before I could respond, another notification popped up. This time from someone I trusted, Jenna, my co-worker. Her message was short but urgent. "Hey, I don't want to freak you out, but someone posted footage from a neighbor's Ring camera. You need to see this." I clicked the link she sent. It opened to a clearer angle of the driveway filmed from across the street. It showed everything. The argument inside the house was muffled, but Liam's voice could be heard shouting faintly. Then the shove. Then my fall. My stomach lurched, watching it, seeing the way my body crumpled, seeing how long I lay motionless while my parents deliberated, seeing how they stepped around me like I was an inconvenience. And then the part that made the comments explode into fury, Liam stepping over my unconscious body to grab his jacket from the hook. The internet erupted. "If this is real, this guy needs charges. Someone tag the police department. This is assault. She needs help, not abandonment." I covered my mouth with my hand, my breath trembling. Aunt Sharon leaned closer, her voice steady but burning with fire. This is the twist they never expected. They cannot hide what they did anymore. And she was right. For the first time in my life, the truth was louder than their lies. Aunt Sharon let me finish scrolling through the avalanche of comments before she gently took the phone from my hands, setting it on the tray like she feared it might detonate if I held on to it any longer. The ER lights buzzed faintly above us, casting that cold hospital glow over everything. But inside me, something warmer had begun to spark a quiet but powerful shift that felt like the first inhale after being underwater too long. For the first time in my life, people on the outside were seeing what I had lived with for years, and their outrage poured through the screen like validation I did not dare hope for. But validation alone did not fix anything. The damage was real. The injuries were real. The financial exploitation was real. And as Aunt Sharon settled back into her chair, expression stern and focused, she said the words that would mark the beginning of everything that came next. "We are calling a lawyer tonight." She said it calmly, like it was the most obvious next step in the world, but my breath hitched at the idea. A lawyer, legal action, real consequences. I felt the familiar guilt rise automatically, that instinctive fear that taking action made me the problem. Sharon must have seen the hesitation on my face because she leaned forward, her voice firm but full of something I had not heard from any adult in years. "Addison, they hurt you. Physically, financially, emotionally. And then they abandoned you. This is not a misunderstanding. This is criminal." My eyes stung again, but not from sadness this time, from the shock of being believed so completely. I managed a small nod, my voice just above a whisper. "Who do we call?" She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone, scrolling through her contacts. "I already texted Jenna. She works part-time at the cafe with you, right? She said her cousin is an attorney specializing in domestic violence and family protection cases. He is willing to talk tonight." Relief, fear, adrenaline, all of it tangled together in my chest. Before I could fully process it, her phone buzzed. She read the message, then smiled with fierce satisfaction. "He is available now." She stepped out of the bay to make the call, giving me a moment alone. I stared at the ceiling, letting the reality settle. I was going to speak to a lawyer, not to defend myself, not to justify myself, but to protect myself. When Sharon returned, her expression was determined. "He can talk to you privately on speaker. He is in his office tonight because he had another late case." She set the phone on the table, pressed a button, and a steady, calm voice filled the room. "Addison, this is Attorney Michael Reyes. I want you to know first that I am very sorry for what you are going through." I took a breath, my fingers twisting slightly in the blanket. "Thank you for talking to me." "Of course." Sharon filled me in briefly, but I would like to hear from you directly. "What happened tonight?" My throat tightened, but I forced myself to speak because this time the truth had weight, purpose, and a listener who would not dismiss it. I explained everything in as steady a voice as I could manage. The argument, the shove, the impact, the blackout, their decision to leave me on the ground, the ambulance, the social media lies, the stolen credit, the drained account, the fraudulent loan. I expected him to interrupt or ask for clarification, but he stayed silent until I finished. When he finally spoke, his tone was controlled, but edged with anger on my behalf. "Addison, based on everything you described, there are multiple violations here. Physical assault, medical neglect, abandonment, potential identity theft, financial fraud, and depending on the footage circulating online, we may have clear evidentiary support." I swallowed hard. "What happens next?" "First, you need protection. I recommend filing an emergency protective order against your brother. Given the injuries and the video, it should be granted immediately." I nodded, slowly, numb with the intensity of hearing my nightmare put into legal terms. "As for your parents," he continued, "their behavior shows negligence and possible complicity. If your mother opened credit in your name, that is a federal offense. We will freeze your credit, dispute the fraudulent accounts, and file a report." My heart pounded. Will they be arrested? That depends on the investigation, but the evidence is strong. The ring footage is important. So is the hospital report documenting your injury and a lack of family presence. He paused. "I want you to know something clearly. None of this is your fault. You are the victim here, and you deserve full protection." My breath shook as I exhaled. Sharon squeezed my arm again, grounding me. Reyes continued, "Do you have a safe place to stay once discharged?" Sharon answered before I could. "She will come home with me." "Good. Avoid contact with them. Block their numbers if needed. Do not respond to messages. Everything they say can be used later." I nodded slowly. "I can do that. One more thing, Addison. With your permission, I will contact law enforcement tonight to start the process." Hearing those words should have made me crumble. Instead, they made something inside me stand taller. "Yes, please, do it." When the call ended, Aunt Sharon tucked her phone away and looked at me with a mixture of pride and sorrow. "I am so proud of you, sweetheart. You are brave." I let the words sink in, letting them stitch over places that had been torn open for years. For the first time, legal consequences were moving. The truth was documented. My silence was gone. I had chosen myself, and there was no going back. By the time the ER doctor finally cleared me for discharge, the sky outside had shifted into that washed-out pre-dawn gray that makes everything feel suspended between night and morning, like the world had been holding its breath while my life unraveled and rebuilt itself inside a single fluorescent-lit hospital bay. Aunt Sharon helped me sit up slowly, her hand pressed gently against my back to keep me steady. The bandage at my temple tugged when I moved. My ribs protested with every breath, and the ache in my skull pulsed like a second heartbeat, but beneath all that pain, something stronger had taken root. A sense of purpose, a sense of clarity, a sense of self I had never allowed myself to claim. As the nurse went over my discharge instructions, I kept my phone on the tray, turned face down, refusing to look at the dozens of missed calls and messages I knew were waiting like landmines. Not yet. Not until I was ready. When the nurse wheeled me through the sliding doors and into the cold morning air, Sharon helped me into her car, adjusting the seatbelt carefully so it would not press against my bruises. The drive to her house was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like protection rather than avoidance. Each passing streetlight cast soft glows across the dashboard, illuminating Sharon's steady hands on the steering wheel. When we pulled into her driveway, she helped me out of the car and guided me into her warm, lived-in home that smelled faintly of cinnamon and lavender cleaner. She settled me on the sofa with pillows propped behind me and a soft blanket tucked around my legs. "You rest, sweetheart. I will make tea and then we can talk about what happens next." But I did not get the chance to rest, because 20 minutes later, barely enough time for her kettle to heat my phone began vibrating again. At first, I ignored it. Then, it kept vibrating, over and over, a relentless buzzing that vibrated against the wooden coffee table like something alive. Sharon walked over to check it. Their names lit the screen one after another. Mom, Dad, Liam. Over a dozen calls. Then a text from my mother popped across the screen in bright white letters. "We are coming over. You need to stop this right now." My stomach tightened. Sharon's eyebrows lowered into a glare. "They are not stepping foot inside my house." As if summoned by the text itself, we heard the unmistakable sound of a car pulling into the driveway. Then another. Doors slammed. Footsteps approached. Sharon's jaw clenched as she looked toward the front window. "They are here," she said quietly, her voice a mixture of fury and readiness. My pulse quickened painfully. I pulled the blanket closer to myself, suddenly feeling exposed. A harsh knock banged against the door. Not a polite knock, the kind of pounding someone uses when they feel entitled to enter a place that does not belong to them. Sharon stormed toward the door before I could say a word, cracking it open just enough to see out. Mark stood on the porch, arms crossed, jaw clenched. Linda hovered behind him, her eyes wide with desperation and indignation, the perfect blend of outrage and self-pity she always wore when she felt her control slipping. And behind them, towering in his expensive jacket like nothing had happened, was Liam. His expression was a mixture of anger and something else. Maybe fear, maybe embarrassment, maybe just the realization that the world was no longer bending in the direction he demanded. Sharon stepped outside and pulled the door mostly shut behind her, shielding me from view. "What are you doing here, Mark?" Her voice was steady as steel. "We need to talk to Addison," he snapped. Sharon shook her head. "No, she is not speaking to you." Linda's voice cracked on the edge of hysterics. "Sharon, please, we need to see her. She left the house last night and we have no idea what she has told people. She is causing chaos online." Sharon let out a breath of disbelief. "Chaos? You mean the truth?" Liam stepped forward, eyes narrowed. "Look, Aunt Sharon, we do not have time for this. Everything is blowing up online and we need to get ahead of it. We need to talk to Addison right now." The entitlement in his tone was so familiar, it physically made my stomach clench. Sharon straightened her spine with a slow, deliberate grace. "No, you do not get to make demands here." Liam scoffed. "You do not understand. People are posting videos." The sound of another car coming up the street cut him off. This one moved slower. Purposeful. 2 police cruisers pulled into the curb, their lights off, but unmistakable. My breath caught. Sharon turned to look back at me through the doorway, her expression calm and reassuring. "It is okay, sweetheart. I called Officer Kent the moment you got here. He saw the videos. He saw the hospital report. Help is here." My chest tightened with relief. 2 officers stepped out of the cruisers, hands resting near their belts in that controlled, authoritative stance that immediately changed the air around all of us. One of them, a tall man with graying hair, approached the group on Sharon's porch. "Evening, folks. We received a report of possible domestic assault and abandonment." Mark stiffened. "That is absurd. This is a family matter." The officer lifted one eyebrow. "Actually, sir, what we have are multiple ring camera recordings, a hospital record confirming a head injury, and evidence your daughter was unconscious without anyone calling for help." The color drained from Linda's face. She looked at me through the small crack Sharon had left in the door. Addison, sweetheart, please come talk to us. You are misunderstanding everything. You have made us look terrible. Sharon stepped fully in front of the doorway, blocking the line of sight. Do not speak to her. You lost that right the moment you left her on the floor. The second officer approached Liam, his tone neutral but firm. Sir, we need you to step aside so we can ask you a few questions about last night. Liam held up his hands defensively. Whoa, hold on. I did not do anything. She tripped. She is clumsy, always has been. The officer pulled out a small notepad. Interesting, because the video shows you pushing her, hard enough to cause a fall and head trauma. Liam's jaw tightened so hard, the muscles in his cheek twitched. Mark stepped forward. Look, this is ridiculous. You are twisting everything. She is dramatic, always has been. Linda clutched her purse strap, her eyes darting between the officers and Sharon as though trying to decide whether to cry or argue. The officer stayed calm. Sir, ma'am, right now our job is to ensure Addison's safety. We are also obligated to report possible identity theft and credit fraud, which were included in the attorney's statement. Linda's mouth fell open. Attorney. Sharon folded her arms. Yes, Linda. An attorney. One who knows exactly what you did with her social security number. Liam scoffed again, but this time the sound was shakier. This is insane. You are all blowing things out of proportion. She always exaggerates everything. The officer stared him down. The only person exaggerating here appears to be you, son. We have enough probable cause to proceed. Mark threw his hands up. This is a misunderstanding. Addison should be the one explaining things. She owes us that. Sharon's expression hardened. She owes you nothing. Not after last night. Not after everything. The officer stepped closer to the door. Ma'am, may we speak with Addison if she feels up to it? Sharon looked back at me. I nodded slowly, even though my hands were trembling. She opened the door wider, allowing the officers inside while blocking my parents from stepping onto the threshold. My mother gasped when she saw me. I looked awful, I knew it. The bandage, the swelling, the bruises, the exhaustion my injuries were visible in a way they could not spin. Oh my God, Addison, look at you! She cried, reaching out as if she had any right. Sharon held out her arm like a barricade. Do not touch her. The officers approached me gently. Officer Kent crouched beside the sofa, so he was eye level with me. Addison, we watched the footage. We spoke with the ER doctor. We believe you. My throat tightened and tears rose, but I held them back. Thank you. Mark snapped from behind Sharon. This is ridiculous. She is manipulating you. She does this. She makes things up. That was the moment Kent stood up slowly, turning with a controlled intensity that made even Liam take a step back. Sir, the only people documented lying here are you three, and you are interfering with a police investigation. Liam's face blanched. Linda clutched her chest like the world was falling apart. Mark sputtered. This is unfair. Addison, tell them. Tell them it was an accident. For the first time in my life, I felt no guilt, no shame, no fear. I looked directly at them, my voice quiet but steady. No, I will not lie for you. You shoved me, Liam. You all left me on the floor. You drained my account. You used my name to open credit, and you are going to face consequences. My mother's face collapsed into shock. Mark lunged forward, but Sharon and the officers blocked him mid-step. That was the moment everything shifted. The officer turned to Liam. Sir, put your hands behind your back. You are being detained for questioning regarding domestic assault. Liam's eyes widened. What? No. You cannot. The sound of handcuffs clicking shut cut him off. The officer turned to Linda. Ma'am, we need you to ride with us for questioning regarding fraudulent credit activity. She gasped. You cannot take me. I am her mother. Sharon whispered sharply. And you treated her like a paycheck. Mark tried to follow, but the second officer stopped him. Sir, we advise you to step back. Any interference will result in charges. Slowly, painfully, my father stepped back, his face twisted with a rage he could not direct at me anymore. And then, silence. The kind of silence that comes when the storm finally breaks. The officers led Liam and Linda toward the patrol cars. Mark stayed on the porch, staring at me like he did not recognize the woman sitting in front of him. Sharon closed the door, gently locking it with a quiet click. She turned to me, her expression softening. "You did it, sweetheart. You finally stood up to them." I let out a shaking breath, my voice trembling. "I am scared." She sat beside me and took my hand. "Being brave does not mean you are not scared. It means you stood up anyway." Outside, the police car doors shut. The engines rumbled, the cruisers pulled away, and for the first time in my life, the house around me felt like safety instead of something I had to survive. The police cruisers disappeared down the street with their engines humming low in the early morning stillness, leaving behind a silence so deep it felt like the world had paused for me to breathe for the first time in years. Aunt Sharon quietly closed the door, slid the deadbolt into place, and leaned her back against it, as if physically holding back the ghosts of the life I had just escaped. I sat on her couch, wrapped in the soft blanket she had given me earlier, my body aching in slow waves, my head still throbbing, but something inside me had shifted. Something tectonic, the kind of shift that comes when the truth finally stops whispering and starts shouting loud enough for everyone to hear. Sharon came to sit beside me, not touching immediately, giving me space to feel whatever I needed to feel. When she finally spoke, her voice was gentle but unshakable. "This is the beginning, sweetheart, not the end." And she was right. The hours that followed were a blur of legal steps, protective orders, and the kind of validation I had never received before. Officer Kent came back inside briefly to give me paperwork confirming the emergency protective order against Liam. He explained it calmly, professionally, but with a subtle layer of compassion beneath his tone. "He cannot contact you, cannot come near you, cannot enter any location where you are present. If he tries, you call us. Immediately." Hearing those words felt like a weight lifting off my chest, one I did not even know I had been carrying every single day of my life. After he left, Sharon helped me settle into her guest room so I could lie down for a bit, but sleep was impossible. My mind kept replaying everything: the shove, the fall, the darkness, the ambulance, the videos, the confrontation, the handcuffs clicking around Liam's wrists. For the first time, I had not been silenced. For the first time, my pain had been believed without question. And for the first time, my abusers were being held accountable. When I eventually emerged from the guest room, Sharon was in the kitchen on the phone with Attorney Reyes. She motioned me over and put the call on speaker. "Good morning, Addison. I hope you were able to rest." "A little," I said truthfully, my voice hoarse. He exhaled calmly. "I have updates. The police have already initiated the identity theft and fraud investigation. The financial accounts you showed us last night are enough to freeze anything connected to your name. We will begin the dispute process today." Relief washed through me like warmth after a long winter. "Thank you." Reyes continued. "More importantly, the ring footage has been submitted as evidence. The assault investigation is now active. Based on what I saw, this will not be a simple matter for your brother to shrug off." Sharon crossed her arms, satisfaction in her eyes. "Good," Reyes added. "The DA's office has already requested the medical report from the ER, and given the video evidence combined with your injury, this will likely escalate to formal charges." My heart thudded. "So he is actually in trouble, the kind that matters." "Yes, Addison, very likely. And your parents may face charges for negligence and financial crimes depending on what the investigation uncovers." Hearing that sent a strange mixture of emotions through me: relief, sadness, anger, grief, justice. It was complicated, but for once, the complexity did not crush me. Reyes wrapped up the call with instructions to rest, stay with Sharon, and avoid contact with anyone from my parents' house. "We will handle the rest," he assured. After the call, Sharon poured 2 mugs of tea and sat with me at the dining table. "How do you feel?" I stared into the steam rising from my cup, free and terrified and relieved and angry and sad, all at once. Sharon smiled gently. "That means you are waking up to your own life." The next 48 hours were a whirlwind. I stayed with Sharon, slept in soft sheets, ate warm food that did not come with strings attached, and slowly began reclaiming pieces of myself that had been buried under years of manipulation. Meanwhile, the world outside kept moving. and justice kept building momentum like a storm gathering intensity. On the second morning, Attorney Reyes called again. "Addison, I wanted you to hear this directly from me. There are updates on 3 fronts." I tightened my grip on the phone. First, regarding the assault, the DA's office is pursuing charges against Liam. There is too much evidence to ignore. He may attempt to negotiate, but given the video, it will be difficult for him to avoid consequences. Sharon whispered good under her breath. Second, Reyes continued, "Your mother contacted the police last night attempting to retract statements she never actually made. In doing so, she revealed inconsistencies that raise suspicion of her involvement in the financial misconduct. The fraud investigation is active. The accounts opened in your name will be flagged as criminal activity on her end rather than your responsibility." My breath caught. So this will not destroy my credit forever. No, Addison. You will recover from this. She may not. I felt a pang of sadness at that, but it was quickly swallowed by the truth. Actions have consequences, even for parents, especially for parents. In the third update, Reyes said, "The videos have spread far beyond your neighborhood. News outlets have picked them up. They blurred your face for privacy, but the story is gaining traction." My stomach flipped. People are outraged that your family left you unconscious. The public pressure may influence the case. Sharon placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "You are safe, sweetheart. No one sees your identity. Only the wrongdoing." For the first time, the narrative was not theirs. It was not twisted. It was not manipulated. It was truthful, honest, mine. On the third day, the police returned not for me but to inform Sharon that Liam had been officially charged. Assault resulting in bodily injury, reckless endangerment, and obstruction for attempting to lie during questioning. When I heard the words, my chest tightened. A long-held breath I had never fully realized I was carrying finally escaped. "He cannot hurt you again," Sharon said quietly. "Not physically, not emotionally, not financially, not legally." And she was right. The next few days unfolded like stepping stones across a river I had been drowning in for years. I blocked my parents' numbers, froze my credit, filed formal statements for the identity theft. The DA's office requested permission to use the videos in court. Neighbors reached out with support. Coworkers sent messages saying they believed me. I cried more in those days than I had in the last decade, but not the helpless tears of someone cornered with no escape. These were cleansing tears, the tears of someone finally letting go of a weight they had been carrying since childhood. One evening, as Sharon and I sat on her porch, wrapped in blankets, watching the sunset turn the sky into soft streaks of gold and pink, she turned to me and said the words that finally made everything real. "You are free now, Addison. You do not owe them anything." And for the first time, I believed her. Justice was not just a court date or charges filed. Justice was the ability to breathe without fear. Justice was the right to live without walking on emotional landmines. Justice was the world finally seeing what had been happening behind closed doors. Justice was me choosing myself. And I truly had. The days that followed unfolded with a strange mixture of quiet healing and irreversible change, like watching the aftermath of a storm from behind a window while the world outside slowly stitched itself back together. Each morning at Aunt Sharon's house began with sunlight filtering through soft curtains and the gentle smell of coffee brewing in the kitchen instead of slammed doors, angry footsteps or the sharp crack of Liam's voice echoing through my skull. I found myself waking up slowly, cautiously, as if my body still did not trust the peace it was being offered, as if some hidden alarm inside me expected the familiar chaos to return at any moment. But it did not. Instead, Sharon would peek into the guest room each morning with a warm smile and ask if I wanted tea or toast, or just a quiet moment before the day started. I would sit at her dining table wrapped in a blanket, the sunlight warming my bruised cheek, and sip tea in silence, letting myself exist without having to justify it. And slowly, something inside me began to thaw. On the fourth morning, while Sharon watered her plants on the porch, Attorney Reyes called again. "Addison, I wanted to update you personally. The identity theft investigation has progressed quickly. The accounts your mother opened under your name have been fully frozen. The balances, disputes, and fraudulent charges are all being redirected toward her. The relief that flooded me was so overwhelming I had to sit down. I felt Sharon's hand on my back almost immediately. Reyes continued, "The bank and credit agencies have flagged your file to protect it. You will not be liable for any of it. The loan, the credit cards, the purchases, all of that will be removed." My breath trembled. "Thank you. You deserve this protection, Addison." He paused, then added, "Your credit will recover, and so will you." After the call, Sharon insisted on cooking breakfast as if scrambled eggs and toast could somehow rebuild the foundation of my life, and strangely, it did. Eating something she cooked for me because she cared not because she wanted something in return felt like an unfamiliar luxury that warmed parts of me I did not realize had grown cold. Later that day, a police officer stopped by to deliver paperwork confirming the next steps in Liam's case. He asked gently if I had any questions. I managed to ask the one that had been sitting in the back of my mind. "Will I have to see him in court?" The officer shook his head. "Not if you do not want to. We can arrange remote testimony or written statements. You are the victim here. You are in control." Those words had never applied to me before. In control. Victim, yes. Survivor, absolutely. But in control. That felt new, transformative. Over the next week, the Ring camera videos spread even further, gaining traction online and sparking conversations about abuse, neglect, and the invisible ways families harm the people who depend on them. News outlets blurred my face and used phrases like the daughter or the young woman, but every time I watched a segment, every time a reporter spoke about the danger of dismissing domestic violence, I felt a strange mix of validation and mourning. Validation that the world finally saw what had been happening behind closed doors. Mourning for the girl I used to be, the girl who thought she had to stay silent to keep the peace. Sharon shielded me from the worst of it, encouraging me not to read the comments or check social media. Instead, she took me on small, gentle outings to help me feel grounded in the world again. We went to a quiet park where ducks waddled along the edge of a pond. We walked slowly through a greenhouse filled with warm, humid air that smelled like soil and new beginnings. She bought me a tiny potted plant, a little green succulent with soft spikes. "Something to grow with you," she said with a smile. That night, I placed it on the nightstand beside the bed she made for me, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was allowed to grow too. As my injuries healed, my spirit slowly knitted itself back together as well. The nightmares faded. The panic in my chest loosened its grip. The guilt that had lived like a parasite inside me began to shrink until it finally dissolved under the weight of the truth. And when the official charges were filed against Liam, assault causing bodily injury, reckless endangerment, obstruction for lying to police, I felt a sense of justice I never believed I would experience. When the fraud charges were initiated against my mother, something inside me finally settled like the last piece of an unbalanced puzzle finally falling into place. I was not crazy. I was not dramatic. I had been harmed, and the world finally acknowledged it. But the truest shift happened inside me. One evening after dinner, Sharon brought out a stack of apartment listings she had printed. "You do not need to rush," she said gently. "You can stay here as long as you want. But when you are ready, I want you to have choices, options. Freedom." The very word freedom made my throat tighten. For the first time, the idea of having my own place, my own small kitchen, my own bed, my own quiet felt possible, deserved even. We sat together flipping through the listings while the soft hum of her refrigerator filled the background, and for the first time the future did not terrify me. It felt open. It felt mine. 2 weeks after the ER night, Sharon and I visited a small apartment complex across town, just 10 minutes from the cafe where I worked. The unit was tiny with a slanted ceiling and old carpet that needed replacing, but sunlight poured through the windows and the air smelled like fresh paint and possibility. When I stepped inside, something inside me clicked. "This is it," I whispered. Sharon squeezed my hand. "Then it is yours." She helped me pay the first month's rent just as a gift she insisted, and within days I found myself standing in the middle of my new living room surrounded by boxes and the quiet of a space that belonged entirely to me. No yelling, no footsteps approaching with anger, no doors slamming, no guilt, no fear, just peace, real peace. On the first night in my new apartment, I sat cross-legged on the living room floor with my little succulent beside me. The room was silent except for the distant hum of traffic outside, and in that silence I spoke the truth out loud. I am free now. My voice echoed softly like a promise. A beginning. A rebirth. 1 year passed. My life rebuilt itself slowly, beautifully, in ways I never imagined possible. I worked full shifts at the cafe, continued my nursing classes, paid my bills on time, cooked dinner for myself without being criticized or interrupted, and surrounded myself with people who cared. Real people. Safe people. Sharon visited often. Jenna stopped by regularly with takeout. Neighbors waved hello. And on my next birthday, the first birthday that was truly mine, I invited a small group of friends and Sharon to my apartment. We ate pizza. We laughed. We watched movies. We sat in my living room surrounded by warmth and kindness instead of toxicity. When the clock hit midnight, Sharon hugged me tightly. Last year, your birthday ended in the ER. This year it ends with love and peace and freedom. I closed my eyes, letting her words sink into the deepest parts of me. I had lost a family, but in doing so, I found myself. And that was the ending and the beginning I always deserved. I want to take a moment before this story fades into the night to speak directly to the people watching, because if you've stayed with me until now, it means something inside this journey resonated with a part of your own life, a part you may not talk about often, or maybe not at all. My name is Addison, and for the first time in 25 years, I get to say this as someone who finally stood up, finally walked away, finally chose peace over chaos, and finally chose myself. It still feels strange to breathe without that constant fear sitting on my chest, strange to wake up in a place where footsteps in the hallway don't make me flinch, strange to speak without waiting for someone to tell me I'm wrong, dramatic or too sensitive. But what's even stranger is realizing that so many of us, so many people walking around every day carry wounds that never show on the skin. If you grew up in a home where love had conditions, where affection was rationed, where silence was survival, then I want you to hear me now. You are not alone. I spent years thinking I had to earn basic kindness, thinking love was something you bought with obedience, patience, or sacrifice, thinking my worth was dependent on being useful to people who never considered my needs real. Maybe you know exactly what that feels like. Maybe you've been the invisible one, the peacekeeper, the forgotten birthday, the scapegoat, the strong one, the quiet one, the one who holds the family together while nobody holds you. If that's you, then I want you to stay here with me for just a moment longer because this last part, is for you. Leaving, speaking up, choosing yourself, it isn't easy. It feels wrong at first because you've been taught that your pain is an inconvenience. Your needs are a burden. Your voice is a threat. You've been conditioned to apologize for breathing too loudly, but life on the other side of that fear. God, it is worth it. I wish someone had told me earlier that peace isn't selfish. Healing isn't betrayal. Protecting yourself isn't cruelty. And walking away from the people who hurt you doesn't make you the villain. It makes you free. Maybe you're still in that house. Maybe you're still in that marriage. Maybe you're still in that relationship with a parent or sibling who knows exactly how to cut you down without ever lifting a hand. Maybe you're still hoping that one day they'll treat you differently. I know that hope. I lived in it for years. But I'm here now, speaking to you after everything that happened, and I want to tell you something I wish someone had told me. Sometimes the family you're born into is not the family that will save you. Sometimes the people who should love you the most are the ones who hurt you the worst. Sometimes the real strength isn't holding on, it's letting go. And if my story made your chest tighten, if it made you remember moments you've buried, if it made you whisper, "That was me," under your breath, then please don't leave this video without writing something in the comments, even if it's just one sentence. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me what time it is. Tell me if any part of this hit home. Tell me if you've ever been silenced, ignored, betrayed, or overlooked. You don't have to share details. This isn't about reliving trauma. It's about not carrying it alone anymore. There are so many people here, especially in this community, who know what it's like to survive a toxic family, to rebuild from nothing, to start healing long after childhood ended. People think stories like mine are rare, but the truth is, they happen every day. They happen behind closed doors in quiet kitchens and family gatherings, where no one sees the child shrinking in the corner, in households where one person shines so bright, everyone else is expected to live in their shadow. These stories are real, and if you're here listening to mine, chances are you have your own. And I want you to know I honor that. I see you, and I am grateful you're here. If you want more stories like this, stories of justice healing, truth survival, and the kind of emotional journeys people don't talk about at the dinner table, then stay with us. Subscribe, turn on notifications, join this space where survivors aren't silenced, where truth has value, where your pain is not minimized, and where your voice finally matters. And if you feel comfortable, share this video with someone who might need it, a friend, a sister, a neighbor, anyone who might be living through their own version of my story without realizing yet that they deserve better. Because sometimes all it takes to change a life is hearing one person say, "You are worth more than what they did to you." I'm saying that to you now. You deserve peace. You deserve respect. You deserve to feel safe in your own home. And if nobody else has ever said it, let me be the first. I am proud of you for surviving what you survived, and I am even more proud of you for choosing to heal. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And wherever you are, whatever your story is, I hope tonight is the beginning of your own new life too.